Hi everyone, welcome to our video on parenting non-binary kids. I'm Pam Wool, the Director of Family Services here at Gender Spectrum.
And I'm Lisa Kenney, Executive Director at Gender Spectrum. Love the topic, Pam. Glad you wanted to do this. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
And this video is just going to be kind of a quick overview. We'll definitely do more videos more in depth about parenting non-binary kids, but we wanted to do kind of an introduction for people kind of new to the subject. So let's start with what does it even mean? What does non-binary mean?
Yeah, I mean, I love the term because most of us, of course, grew up thinking of gender in terms of the binary, right? So kids were either girls or boys. And we always knew that that wasn't really reflective of people's actual experience, but we still just sort of forced everybody to pick one of those boxes. And that's sort of the binary, right? So I can sort of appreciate that there's a range within being a boy or being a girl, but you still got to pick.
Only two boxes.
But there's two boxes.
Right.
What the non-binary says is I'm just not in one of those two boxes. And there's lots of different identities within non-binary identities, but the important thing to know, regardless of which non-binary identity, is just simply somebody saying, I don't fit in one of those boxes, and I'm going to find, or there is a different name for what my experience is or my understanding of my own gender. So that's really what the non-binary identity is.
Exactly. And then I think, too, it's important to note that, it's not a new experience, right? This is an experience that's been, throughout history and throughout different cultures around the world. The only thing that's really new about it is that, we're starting to have language, and it's starting to kind of enter popular culture, that language.
Right.
So not feeling like this is just a fad or this is something new. I think sometimes parents feel like, oh, this is popular, and so my kid is just, calling themselves this. In fact, what might be happening is they might have friends who have non-binary identities, or they might be watching something, on YouTube, but it's not that that's making them be non-binary. What it is it's helping them recognize who they are. They're feeling like, I have some feelings, something's not, I don't quite fit into the boxes, but oh yeah, that resonates with me.
Right. I mean, it's gender is something that I think for most generations, actually, people didn't think about their gender very much at all, unless it was a significant issue for you. But I think that's really different today. I think youth are much more likely to say, wait a minute, what really is my experience, and then find the language that fits.
Right.
And it's easier for them to find others that are doing it. I think the one thing that's important to note, though, is that there's lots of research out there that confirms that in the same way that nobody can change your identity, nobody can change anybody's identity. I mean, your gender identity is your own. And so, well, they might be exploring to find the language for it. Nothing's going to happen because they see a YouTube video other than what's happening for them anyway. What they're really trying to do is find a way to reflect their experience, and that's not create their experience.
Right. And they're really trying to tell you something important about them. Right. They're trying to tell you something about their experience, and it's actually a really big deal that they're choosing to share it with you. Right. It's probably something they've been thinking about for a while before they choose to share it with you, and they're trusting you enough to tell you.
Right. And they're scared that you won't. I mean, every child, anybody that falls outside what has already been communicated as expected, there's a fear that parent will reject them around it. And so it's really important to know this is precious information that's being shared and to treat it with the respect that that has.
So one thing I think is important, for parents of non-binary kids is to not try to make them choose a box.
Right.
I think our tendency is to do that just because that's what we know and that's what we've been taught. But, really...
well, and there's also practical issues, right?
Absolutely.
It's easier as a parent if somebody fits in the box in the structure that we have in our society to then manage the everyday sort of issues that come up.
Right, and we think it's going to be easier for our kid, too, right?
But the truth is, it's not easier to force them into a box, and, it is a little more challenging. I mean, we need to name that and respect it, and it still needs to be done. Absolutely. The problem isn't with the child that's wanting to name their experience in the non-binary. The problem is we've created binary systems of our own construction, and that obviously gets in the way and can be challenging. So it's more to look at what are the problems with that structure than what's wrong with my child who's not going along with with that.
And I think it's helpful sometimes because, it's not, part of the common, the typical societal, norms. It's to help our kids come up with language for themselves that they feel good about, because people will always ask them questions, right? There's always going to be questions whether your kid's little or a teenager. So,
well, I'd say it a little bit differently. I don't think I think we have to be careful not to give our children language.
To help them,
Yeah, but I think what we do want to do is to help them think about as they're finding language, I mean, first of all, we want to normalize the experience of exploring, and that language can evolve as our understandings of ourself evolve. But I think the other thing is to help them know how to think through how do they want to respond to social situations that come up all the time. I mean, we ask kids regularly, if not a daily basis, to either line up according to their gender or to name their gender or identify their gender. And for non-binary kids, that can be really challenging because the question is, what do I say? And every time I say it, I have to explain it or stand in a different line or choose a line because I don't have another option. So part of that, I think, is to help them sort of take these everyday social situations and name that, yeah, this is something that you're going to go through. How do you want to respond? And how would you like me to respond when people ask me? Exactly. And I think thinking that through in advance with them and helping them to identify the language they feel most comfortable with at wherever they are in the process is really helpful, and also helps how, I wonder what they want me to say. And it may not be obvious. I just want to really point out that oftentimes we think, oh, our child wants us to say this or that or to correct people in this way or that. That really depends. It depends on the child. It depends on where they are and their own experience. So it's really important, again, part of this is we're just trying to enhance the intimacy we already hopefully have in our relationship with our child. Mm-hmm. And this is a great time to just ask them what they mean and to empower them to use language to identify their own experience. That's a really important thing as parents for all kids in all areas.
Right. And speaking of language, so kind of just this really basic respect of like the language they use to describe themselves, the name, the pronoun, these things that may be different, and maybe even hard for us to switch. Just kind of coming down to the basic idea of, okay, I'm going to listen to what you're saying about yourself and try to respect it, even if I make mistakes, which I will.
I will, for sure, I will. Exactly. No, Pam, I think that's really the central point. I mean, I think in all things, and especially these areas of self-understanding and one's identities, I mean, I think with our kids, what we're really trying to do in childhood and adolescence is to keep that relationship and build on that relationship so that as they're facing these things and they're questioning these things, they include us in that process. We're part of that. Right. And that really is all about our response and the respect and the way that we value what their experience is. As soon as we begin to sort of, interact with them like this is not important or it's just a fad or this is just some other, kind of crazy thing, then they'll stop bringing that to us. Right. And in that case, when things really need to be sorted out, we're no longer there for that kind of support. And that is really where the problem is,
like
right?
They're going on their journey
with or without us, right? Exactly.
And so I think the main point is like we want that relationship and we want to be part of the journey.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's super important. And if you can help your kid not feel isolated or alone, help them know that there are other people out there in the world just like them. Try to find people they can connect with if they haven't already.
That's right.
I think that's really important.
And that part of being human means continually understanding the world around us, I think, in more sophisticated, nuanced ways, and also understanding ourselves in new ways. And so if their language changes, that's okay. They don't need to be worried that, boy, they've already come and told you this thing that was really difficult, so now that's it, I'm stuck forever and ever. But to just say, hey, if your understanding evolves in a new way in which there's new language, please share that with me, right? And the nice thing is you don't have to know what it means when they come and say, oh, I now identify in this way. What you can just say is, oh, tell me what that is. And if that's different than the thing before, then say, and how is that different in your way of seeing it than the other thing? Because I really want to understand what this change means for you. And I think that's really the most important thing. It's all really about relationship. You don't have to be an expert on anything related to gender. It really is just about being present with your child and coming from a place of love.
Right, and present now. Like try not to go too far into the future and let yourself spin out. Try to stay present. What's my child telling me? What do I need to do to support my child right now?
That's right. It's just that simple. Of course, parenting's never that simple, so this won't be either. But these are sort of the basics anyway. And I think we'll do some other sessions on this topic. And so if people are curious about that, stay tuned. But also if you have questions or things that you want to contribute, please join the lounge and send us your questions, and we will incorporate them in future programs.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.